I'm going to cover two basic topics, and that would be forensic document analysis, that's handwriting identification, the dating of documents. You know, when was this document produced? Was it produced in 1996 or was it produced last week? Sometimes in a court hearing, the date of a document is very important. And the second segment I'm going to talk about is crime scene reconstruction. And because for 14 years I was a crime scene team leader in the state police, and that's an important facet of police work. This comes up a lot of time in forensic files and on the ID channel. And so I'm going to talk about some of the crime scenes I worked, some of the staged crime scenes, and how you recognize a staged crime scene when you walk into it. My role was that Steve Thomas, who was the lead detective in that case, in fact, he wrote the book, JonBenet, which is a very authoritative book about the JonBenet Ramsey case. Steve Thomas called me. They wanted a second opinion on the ransom note. And their document analyst for the Colorado Bureau of Identification had done a report. But because of the size of the case, they wanted a second opinion. And they called one of the federal laboratories and asked them if they would do it, and they said no, they only do a primary workup. They won't do a secondary workup. But they referred Steve to me in East Lansing. So Steve flew the evidence out, the ransom note, and the crime scene photos, and all the evidence connected with it for a second opinion. I spent 3 days on it, going over the evidence, and wrote a report. And my report somehow wound up on the internet, as everything does. But that was my role, is to write another opinion or a second opinion on the ransom note. In my report, I wrote that the handwriting habits of Patsy Ramsey did appear in that ransom note. However, there were differences present that I couldn't resolve, and so I could not make an identification of her as the author. But all the other suspects that I did examine were eliminated as the author. I was not able to eliminate her. It was a hard case. It was a very difficult case because the ransom note was 2.5 pages, and it was written in a disguised manner with a fiber tip pen. And so someone had written it probably with their unfamiliar hand. If they were right-handed, they wrote it with their left hand, and vice versa. So it was a hard case to work on, trying to break down that disguise. And from that point of view, it was. However, there was other forensic evidence in that note that was compelling. For example, that note was written on Patsy Ramsey's tablet, which was in her kitchen. And we know that because the ransom note was impressed into her tablet. And we know there was a practice note written that was destroyed that we never got. We also know that the pen and the ink that wrote that ransom note came from her pen in her coffee cup by the telephone. So the note was written on her tablet with a practice note somewhere with her pen. People understand a lot about forensic evidence today. From the ID channel, from forensic files, they watch that on television, and those are very good channels. They're very instructive. What I want them to take away is maybe I can go into some areas that they're not familiar with. For example, how do you date a document? How do you tell if a document was recently produced? And an appreciation of crime scenes and how difficult they really are. When you start a crime scene, you're looking at a week, at least, probably of a 60-hour day in resolving, in processing, in cataloging all the evidence, doing the photography, doing the reports, doing the sketches, doing the measuring. It's a tremendous amount of work. And that doesn't always appear on the ID channel or forensic files as to how detailed and how in-depth that investigation has to be. And the amount of responsibility that's on your shoulders as a homicide investigator at a crime scene.